Uh, Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to our seminar today. I'm Angela Stent, Director of the Center for Eurasian, Russian, and East European Studies, and we're very lucky today to have an excellent panel to discuss a very important issue. As you probably know, yesterday President Putin congratulated President-elect Biden on his election, and in the message from the Kremlin stressed that the US and Russia bear special responsibility for global security, and they need to work together to make the world a safer place. And obviously, the first thing on the agenda of a new Biden administration is going to have to be paying attention, turning attention to the very important arms control treaty, the New START that's about to expire on February the 5th. And this is going to be the subject of our discussion today. And we're delighted that Ambassador Antonov and Michael Gordon have both agreed to discuss the subject. So I'm just going to introduce our moderator for today, and then she will take over. It is, of course, Jill Doherty. She's an adjunct professor here at Georgetown University. She's also a global fellow at the Woodrow Wilson Center, where she runs a series of podcasts. And of course, before that, she was for many years a very well-known CNN correspondent, a correspondent from Moscow for a number of years, and then the State Department correspondent. I know that even in high school, she was a very assiduous student of Russian, and she's an expert in all things Russian. So we're delighted to have you moderate this, Jill, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
There we go. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Stent. I really appreciate that introduction. And welcome to our Journalist Bootcamp. We have a little bit of snow here in Washington, D.C., kind of giving us a Moscow atmosphere, so it feels very nice and cozy. And I'm glad that everyone can join us for this bootcamp. You know, our subject today is complex, crucial, and extremely timely. It's the New START agreement, the New START arms control agreement, and that is the last remaining arms control agreement between Russia and the United States. It entered into force February 5th, 2011, and very, very soon, in fact, February 5th coming up of 2021, it is set to expire. And just, I know I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but just to remind us, it essentially limits each side, Russia and the United States, to a certain number of deployed nuclear weapons to their lowest levels since the Cold War. So no more than 700 deployed strategic missiles and bombers, and no more than 1,550 deployed strategic warheads. So it expires, as I said, it's only 16 days after the incoming president, Joe Biden, will be inaugurated. So it's one of the first, if not the first major national security decision that the incoming Biden administration will have to make and move on quickly if it wants to. So up to this moment, you've had the Trump administration has not accepted Russia's offer to extend New START, as it could be extended according to the original agreement for 5 years without conditions. So the Trump administration didn't accept that. The Biden administration has expressed support for extension without conditions. So as Dr. Stent mentioned, we have two really excellent people to discuss this. The first is Anatoly Ivanovich Antonov, the ambassador of the Russian Federation to the United States of America. And why I wanted the ambassador to join us is that he really is the person who knows this subject, probably more than anyone, because he headed the negotiating team in 2009 on the New START agreement. He has served as Deputy Minister of Defense, Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. He is a very senior diplomat, and now here in the United States representing Russia, and we're very glad to welcome you, sir. And we have Michael Gordon, National Security Correspondent for the Wall Street Journal. So welcome to both of you. You know, there are a lot of Russia-related issues in the news today. I think in the interest of time, it would be fascinating if we could discuss the whole gamut, but we only have 1 hour. And so I want to use it wisely and jump right in and reminding our audience, we will talk. I'll be posing some questions. There will be a discussion between Michael Gordon and the ambassador, and then we're going to open it up to questions. So be thinking about those. You can put them into the Q&A function. So just write them right in there. We'll look at them and see that we can get to as many as possible. Ambassador Antonov, I would like to begin with you. As I've been saying, we're facing this immediate deadline to either extend START or let it die. And President Putin offered to extend it for 5 years without conditions. The question to you would be, is that offer still on the table for the Biden administration? And if it is, do you expect to be able to reach agreement with the incoming administration?
I would like to welcome everybody. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you. Today is a very unusual day because we can see snow outside of our windows. It's a little bit chilly, but our discussion, I hope, will be very interesting because it touches interests of United States, Russia, and international community as well. I'll try to explain where we are. I'll try to explain you why we have failed till now. And of course, I'm optimism, and I will be waiting when the administration communities can start working, and when there will be an invitation for me, for my colleagues to come to State Department, to White House, to Pentagon, and to start real negotiations, not discussion, but negotiations. It's very important for us. If you permit me, I will take a few minutes just only to explain where we are and what we are planning to do and whether our proposal is still on the table. The fate of a New START is a central issue for strategic stability. Indeed, there is not much time left before its expiration date. You just mentioned that less than 2 months, Russia and the United States will either agree to extend the treaty before February the 5th, 2021, or there will be no legal restrictions on their nuclear arsenals for the first time in the past. Let me dot all the I's in the first place. Russia, as a responsible actor in international relations, is interested in extending New START. The extension would prevent the total collapse of the nuclear missiles verification and restriction mechanisms. It would maintain transparency and predictability in relations between the two major nuclear powers, as well as gain time for discussing or negotiating how to adapt arms control regime to current conditions. The treaty is called the gold standard of arms control agreements for a reason. To fulfill its central provisions, Russia and the United States reduced the total number of nuclear warheads by a third, down to 1,550, and lowered the maximum level of deployed delivery vehicles by more than a half, down to 700. I want to emphasize that New START does not limit the development of new and modernization of the existing strategic offensive weapons. Thus, the military and political leadership of our country has repeatedly stated that new intercontinental missile Avangard and Sarmat will be treaty accountable, unless, of course, the agreement will cease this. Therefore, New START maintains strategic balance without undermining nuclear authority. One of the most important elements of the treaty is level of transparency and providing both kinds of information on the current state of their strategic force. As of December 2020, United States and Russia teams 328 on-site inspections of ICBM, SLM, and heavy bomber sites. It have 20,000
Mr. Ambassador, I'm very, very sorry to interrupt. We seem to be having a slight audio problem, and I'm wondering if you would be able to move slightly closer to the computer, that you might get a little bit better sound, or it might be just the Wi-Fi connection. I'm very sorry to interrupt, but please continue.
Again, somebody would like to create additional problems for Russian-American relations.
Sounding better already.
That everything can happen, of course, but you see that it's very ridiculous. I just would like to mention that all these measures that I have mentioned, and I don't want to repeat them again, contribute to preventing a new strategic nuclear arms race and a possible nuclear conflict. That's why New START not only meets interests of the United States and Russia, but also benefits the international community as a whole. It would be unwise to abandon such an effective instrument, particularly since we have nothing to replace it with. Therefore, Russia consistently advocates for the extension of the treaty. Back in December 2019, Russia offered the United States to extend this agreement for 5 years without any preconditions. And I would like to answer to your question. This offer still stands. However, our partners in Washington are not ready for an unconditional extension of New START in exchange for a short-term renewal just for 1 year. You remember that we are in favor of 5 years. They have proposed signing a politically binding framework agreement to determine the main parameters of follow-on arms control treaty. On October the 20th, Russia declared its readiness to meet the United States halfway on 2 key issues. We agreed to extend the treaty for 1 year, and we expressed our regret, and to freeze for the same period the number of nuclear warheads that each party possesses. However, this was not enough for the United States negotiators. They insist on an excessively harsh verification regime of the freeze. It's not that we oppose verification regime or verification instruments in general. I would like to emphasize it again. We are not against, moreover, we have verification regime and START treaty. But in this case, such regime would be inconsistent with the subject and format of a political agreement. All verification regime, all verification instruments have to be ratified. It is in accordance with your legislative norms, as well as it goes along with the Russian constitution. That's why we cannot take politically binding commitment on verification measures without getting consent from State Duma, as well as in your case from Senate. And we are sure that it's only through detailed and substantive negotiations that we can determine what the next agreements verification mechanism should look like. I should also say a few words about Washington's persistent ideas on including new systems and participants in arms control negotiations, because last maybe 3 months we discussed this issue very, very thoroughly and in details with our colleagues from State Department and White House. You know very well how much the geopolitical situation has changed since the Cold War and how much progress in military technologies we have made. The role of new factors affecting strategic stability is on the rise. They include, you are not surprised, missile defense, global strike systems, hypersonic delivery means, emerging space weapons, etc. To ignore them, it's impossible and downright dangerous. That is why Russia favors a comprehensive approach to arms control agreements. As for expanding the negotiating format to new participants, we are open to a multilateral dialogue. However, we believe that forcing anyone to participate in such discussions is counterproductive. I would like to confirm that our priority is engaging the United Kingdom and France in the arms control dialogue. They have military alliance with the United States. Moreover, the United States has secret cooperation with UK regarding a nuclear arsenal, and there is exchange of information, there is exchange of weapons, and of course it's covered with a great level of secrecy, and it is excluded from any discussions between Russia and United States. Moreover, this issue was excluded from the START treaty, and maybe it's high time for us to look at such cooperation, what is going on. As to China, you see that we know position of China. China has mentioned that at this juncture, China is not ready to start, not to start, but to join us at the table of negotiations. And again, when I'm talking about UK, France, and China, I would like to say you that they should be their national decision whether they are ready to participate in such negotiations or not. We are ready to search for mutually acceptable solutions for all of these issues I have mentioned. It will require an extremely patient expert work. It is hard to predict how much time it will take, but such efforts will be clearly more effective if supported by stability and predictability in nuclear and missile sphere. Such conditions can only be assured by extension of New START. Concluding my remarks, I would like to note that the uncertain fate of the treaty is but one manifestation of the current alarming state of arms control. We are virtually on the verge of its complete collapse and a nuclear and missile arms race that will inevitably follow. Russia seeks to avoid such negative developments. We have recently put forward a number of peace initiatives. However, this administration has consistently rejected them, all while speaking about the need to achieve overwhelming military dominance and accusing us of aggression. You can find such articles every morning, and you will open any American newspaper and you will get more and more information on this. I would like to give you a couple of examples. Russia proposes to declare reciprocal moratorium on the deployment of ground-based intermediate and shorter-range missiles. In response, the administration states its plan to deploy several batteries of INF systems in Europe and other regions for 2023. Another example, we insist on the CTBT entry into force at the earliest possible date. The United States refuses to ratify the treaty. Its example is followed by other countries. I don't want to name names. Their participation in the agreement is necessary for entry into force. This very important treaty. The situation around the Open Skies Treaty is even less consistent. All states parties to the treaty, including Russia, speak of the possibility to resolve differences at the negotiating table. All of the participant parties fully understand the importance of preserving transparency and confidence-building measures. Nevertheless, Washington has decided to withdraw from the treaty. And frankly, I don't know what will be the future of this treaty because of such decision has created many problems for us how to implement this treaty. In these circumstances, it would be particularly timely for Russia and the United States to confirm the Gorbachev-Reagan formula that a nuclear war cannot be won, it must never be fought. Thus, our countries would acknowledge the inadmissibility of the use of nuclear weapons, regardless of the field, and would put an end to the speculations about the so-called escalate to de-escalate concept. Russia approaches the United States with this idea back in October 2018, 2 years ago. We have also submitted a similar proposal for consideration by the P5. Unfortunately, we have not yet succeeded in either bilateral or multilateral format. Nevertheless, we continue our efforts to promote this and many other peace initiatives. In doing so, we are guided by the understanding of the special responsibility for maintaining global security borne by Russia as one of the two major nuclear powers. You have started from this thesis, and it's very important that we are the largest nuclear weapon states. We are the powers, we are members, permanent members of Security Council, and we bear special responsibility for international peace and international security. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. One very quick, and I hope it will be quick, clarification. Are there any last-minute ongoing negotiations with the Trump administration on New START? Or are you totally focusing now on the new incoming administration?
Frankly, you see that I'm ready to have a lunch with my interlocutor even today, and I'm ready to discuss a problem of extension of this treaty. It goes without saying. So I just would like to say you the doors of our negotiating team are open, and we are ready to continue such dialogue. I understand that it's very important for the United States to have bipartisan support or consent for a potential treaty agreement with the Russian Federation. And I'm ready to work with Republicans and with Democrats. It's up to them whether they are willing to see, whether they are ready to listen to me, whether they are ready to speak to me directly, openly, but not through mass media. And I consider that it could be very interesting conversation. By the way, if you permit me, just only quick, I tried to approach many members of Senate my proposal. Let's sit together. Could I explain you a substance of START treaty? Could I explain you why we are in favor of arms control with the United States? What kind of advantage or disadvantage we have? What kind of advantage and disadvantage United States can get from a negotiating table or the results of our negotiations with the United States? But you see that, to my regret, you see that there is no any opportunity for me to meet to them. I hope that after 20th of January, there will be a good possibility for me to discuss this issue. I'm ready to come to Senate.
Okay, good to hear that. Michael Gordon, you heard a lot. That was a very full conversation by the ambassador. I'm sure your journalist pen is itching to either write or you're itching to say something. Let me just kick you off with one idea, but you can take it where you want. That idea, that separate agreement that was offered about the freeze on warheads of all ranges for 1 year. Why is that important? And that was different. That was a separate, offer from New START. Why is that important? Or feel free to pick up on anything the ambassador said.
Okay, well, thank you, Jill, and to the audience. Jill and I were both in Moscow at the same time, based here as correspondents. And I'm here obviously in my kind of personal capacity representing nobody and nothing. But I have a few thoughts. I mean, first off, it's a little sad that we're having this conversation at all, because what we're essentially talking about, but necessary, is extending an arms control agreement as a stopgap. We're not really talking about any further agreement that's immediately at hand that might do more than New START. But it seems that, as a practical step, extending New START, there's certainly a lot of logic to that, to buy time to do something more. But one thing I've observed just as a journalist is neither the Russian Federation nor the incoming Biden administration has ever really defined what that something more should be. The Russian Federation certainly doesn't like the Trump administration proposal, but it's never really spelled out its own vision of what the next step should be in arms control and is part of an agreement that could be negotiated. I'm not even sure it's said whether there should be further reductions in nuclear weapons or whether tactical nuclear weapons can be on the table. So on the Russian side, they've been clear to object to the Trump policy, not spelled out what they themselves would favor. And on the Biden administration, it's quite clear that President-elect Biden favors New START extension, and he's described it as a foundation for future arms control arrangements, not agreements, arrangements. But the new team that's coming in has not spelled out, it wasn't a campaign issue certainly, what these new arrangements should be in any detail. So I think that's just an observation I make. And I have a few just questions to put just based on the ambassador's statement, just maybe he could clarify his position further. But a question I had, Jill, was you mentioned President Putin put on the table there should be a 1-year freeze on nuclear warheads of all types, and this would last for the same period of New START extension. My question for the ambassador would be, is this, I presume this proposal is still on the table for the incoming Biden administration, and if President-elect Biden were to extend START for 5 years instead of 1 year, would this nuclear warhead freeze last for 5 years? Would the Russian side be prepared to commit to that? And then also the President-elect Biden has said during the campaign that he said that the sole purpose of US nuclear weapons, in his view, should be to deter a nuclear strike. This is not a no first use statement, but it's a bit of a move in that direction. The sole purpose. Would the Russian Federation embrace that sort of declaration on its part? And what would it mean, since, as I understand Russian military doctrine, they basically reserve the right to use nuclear weapons to defend against a conventional attack, much as NATO has done for many years. So if the ambassador could clarify, is it possible a nuclear freeze, warhead freeze could last for more than 1 year? Could it last for 5 years if New START was extended for 5 years? And how do you assess President-elect Biden's assertion that the sole purpose of nuclear weapons should be to deter a nuclear strike and not a conventional attack or a chemical attack or even a cyber attack?
Mr. Ambassador?
Something up that's in the news.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Of course, you are raising very sensitive issues, very important issues, and I understand that all journalists, specialists would like to know answers to these questions. What I would like to say to you first, Michael, you said that you're right saying that we would like to not to permit collapse of our cooperation with the United States. Please don't forget that we have had such cooperation within 50 years, regardless who was in administration, whether Democrats or Republicans. Even during the Cold War, we still had a unification regime, very thoroughly, how to say, elaborated. And we know a time when your inspectors were sitting the portals of our plants where we create nuclear warhead delivery systems. But it was during the Cold War. And I remember 11 years ago, negotiations with the team of Wolfgang Mueller, who tried to persuade us that we have been living not in Cold War era, and it's high time for us to change our attitude towards arms control limitations and mechanisms that were elaborated during the Cold War. We create more could I say, light mechanism of verification, because we have an excellent history of communication on these issues, and we know all your strategic basis of nuclear weapons, and your military guys know our strategic nuclear weapons. What will be the next? Of course, it's a good question. And today, I cannot say you what will be the subject of a future negotiations. I remember how we started 11 or 12 years ago. We sit together and we started explaining what we want, what we would like to limit, where we would like to see transparency. We decided to take a list of paper and put all elements that could combine us. And then in the end, our presidents identified what key issues should be in a potential arrangement, agreement, understanding, and so on. So it's not easy to say today what will be in the court. One more issue that Michael mentioned, you see that he mentioned that it could be new arrangements. You see that I don't trust new arrangements. I prefer legally binding treaty. I can explain you why I have such a negative position. JCPOA. Legally, it's not legally, it's politically binding commitment by one administration. And immediately when another administration came to White House, that administration has decided to leave such arrangement. So we need more predictability when we are talking about arms control. Many times during my meetings with a journalist, with a specialist, I used to explain Japanese proverb that it's very easy to destroy a church within 1 year, but it will be needed 3 years to construct a new one. So as to proposal made by President Putin to this current administration regarding extension of, for 1 year START treaty and freeze all types, and where this proposal is. It seems to me that this proposal is in White House now, and it will be till 20th of January. We would like to see who will come to administration. We would like to know who they are. And it seems to me that we have to start from the scratch, because we have nothing with this administration regarding any agreements in arms control. What we have now, there is just only a legally binding document that we call golden standard. That's all. Let's decide. Should we keep first? Then we will negotiate other issues that are very important for United States. And please don't forget that the Russian Federation has its own position, has its own concern regarding United States policy. It's normal. It's normal. We are an independent country and we have our concerns. And you say, what this administration has done? This administration has decided to put on the table just only ideas that could meet interests of United States, totally ignoring Russian concerns. Some of them we expressed 10, 15 years ago, and I'm ready to mention it, just only one, to save time, missile defense.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. A question came in, and I think maybe a couple of questions already I'd like to address. And Michael, I think it's important that you put these in perspective because of your understanding of this issue. One from William Courtney is, will an extension of New START have a positive impact on other areas of US-Russian relations, or is this a wholly separate issue? And that's something that I've been thinking about. Is there more to the US-Russia relationship than simply arms control? Mr. Ambassador, if you can keep it very short, and then I want to hear from Michael, and then we'll get some more questions in. Thank you. So will it improve other positive impact on other areas of the relationship?
During the Cold War period, strategic stability issues were a core of our, or heart of our relations. And of course, I'm working here not a representative of my president on strategic stability. I'm representative of the Russian Federation on all issues. And I would like to have pragmatic, friendly relations with the United States on various issues, including science, technology, ballet. I would like you to enjoy Russian painting, Russian artists. So I'm sure that if we restore trust between the United States and Russia, basing on strategic stability, of course, I'm sure it will improve Russian relations. I hope.
Thank you. Michael, could I ask you about verification? I mean, there is a question about that, and it's always been a very big issue. The question is quite specific. It has to do with other proposals for verifying, for counting nuclear warheads that are not deployed on strategic offensive delivery systems. And the question is, would the Russian Federation, this is, I know, a question for the ambassador, but let me hear Michael on this for a second. The question is, would the Russian Federation be prepared to discuss on-site inspections or portal monitoring of warhead storage sites or other sites where warheads are manufactured? Why is that? Why has verification always been such a thorny issue? Should we just continue with what we've got? Is there something that we could move in that direction? What do you think?
Well, I mean, it's an excellent question, and it's the expectation, as the ambassador knows, of the American Congress, that any future arms control treaty, if there ever is one, would cover not merely strategic systems, but also Russian tactical nuclear systems. And so then the question arises, how do you verify that, and how do you monitor it? And what the Trump administration was looking for was a declaration by each side of how many of sort of non-strategic warheads it had. And then it had an idea that it wasn't actually ready to deploy this idea in practice quite yet, but an idea for monitoring this, where you would set up a system outside of warhead production facilities, sort of as was done in a certain sense during the INF treaty outside Butkinsk, to monitor warheads kind of coming in and out. And so that was in lieu of going to every individual site where warheads might be deployed, but it would give you a fix on how many new ones were coming in and how many warheads were being retired. This is the so-called portal monitoring system, which was more of an idea than an actual capability the US was ready to deploy. The ambassador said something very interesting on this, which I think he could explain further. What happened in the talks with the Trump administration is the Russians rejected this idea, and that was the end of the framework agreement. But he said that, Ambassador, you said that you certainly couldn't agree to verification as part of a framework agreement. It would have to be as part of a treaty. So I guess the question would be, if tactical nuclear warheads were encompassed by a future arms control treaty that was to be ratified by the Senate, would Russia accept at least the principle that there should be some degree of intrusive verification to monitor the number of these tactical warheads? You said it wasn't acceptable for a political agreement, but you left the door open as a treaty. Is that something Russia would accept? And might you even consider a portal monitoring arrangement? Or do you have some other idea for how to go about this that you would like the Americans to consider?
Could I answer?
Yes,
Yeah.
It's for you.
I'm not sure whether you can hear me or not.
We can, now we can.
So you said some questions. Again, verification mechanism, verification procedure.
Mr. Ambassador, could you again move just a little closer? I do think that helped the sound. And
even to kiss this screen, you see already.
We can do that later.
So verification and control mechanism of any agreement, of any arrangement, like, for example, it was done in JCPOA. But I hope that everybody understands the differences between the status of JCPOA and START treaty agreement. First of all, we have to deal with the subject scope of any agreement. Then we will decide what kind of verification measures we will take on board and what kind of measures will be enough for us to be sure that central parts or central limitations of this treaty are fulfilled, and there is no any hesitation in opposite party that, for example, Russia is violating one or another ceiling that will be identified in this treaty. We should start discussing verification mechanism, whether it should be intrusive or it should be more light, and then it was fixed in a START treaty. I would like to repeat that it was American proposal to forget about portal verification system that was existing during INF treaty period, during the Cold Treaty period. It was American proposal to make this verification more easy. We were reluctant at that time, but they persuaded us. And you see that how situation has changed, and now at least some specialists in the United States are insisting to see more intrusive measures regarding any subject that will be a core of a potential new treaty. Today, I cannot say you what kind of verification regime will be, but I would like to assure you for 100%, we will not agree on any portal verification mechanism that existed when INF treaty was working. It was decision of United States to withdraw from this treaty. It was decision of United States to destroy that mechanism. And we are not ready to take just only this mechanism from that old one treaty and put it in a new one without understanding what will be subject, what will be the scope of this negotiation. Another question that Michael has mentioned, he said me that there was a decision of Senate regarding some elements of a new potential treaty, and he has mentioned nuclear tactical nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear or non-strategic nuclear weapons. You see that I'm not sure that it will not be enough 1 hour to explain where we are on this issue, because what we are concerned, what we are talking now, we are talking about deterrence capabilities. Tactical nuclear weapons, non-strategic nuclear weapons. It's not a, how to say, it's a threat for us, because we are talking about United States system that could reach the Russian territory. There is difference in identification what is tactical nuclear weapons in the United States and in the Russian Federation. There is no definition at all. So we have to sit again, we have to permit our expert to sit and to discuss what we want to discuss and what kind of subject will be. Moreover, it's very important that your tactical weapons, how we understand, is deployed in Europe, in various European countries. And these bombs can be delivered to the Russian territory very quickly. We consider them strategic by nature because there is a principle, so-called the principle was elaborated during START 1, Kamchatka, Alaska, two parts of United States and Russian Federation that are very close, and we see whether your weapon can reach Russian territory and whether American weapon can reach Russian territory. So it means that if we see such situation, it means that we are talking about strategic weapon. And what and we have to concentrate on weapons that are the most dangerous for you. Once again, let's permit our negotiators to deal with this issue.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
Jill, don't forget that President Putin has decided to freeze all weapons, all nuclear weapons, without saying whether it is strategic one or tactical one, all nuclear weapons, as it was proposed or put on the table of negotiations by this administration for 1 year, taking into account that strategic factors that are very important, cybersecurity, missile defense, conventional weapons will be discussed during negotiation that could be started immediately after extension of START treaty.
See, that's the thing. Thank you. I think that's very important, and it kind of pushes our discussion. I almost felt that we were in the midst of arms control negotiations right now, because obviously you know the subject very, very well. But let's broaden it out a little bit. And if I could return, and Michael, this is for you. If I could return to the idea of China. I know in the beginning, the Trump administration made it a very important point that they wanted to bring China into any new agreement. Initially, Russia said, no, the Chinese are not interested and we aren't either. And there seems to be a bit of evolution of that view, because now I hear the ambassador saying it's a national decision for other countries. Michael, why was it so important for the Trump administration to insist in the beginning that China be brought in? Is it actually important? And going forward to other agreements that we might have, is it worth it? Should China be part of these agreements going forward?
I think that for the it's a excellent and not an easy question. For the Trump administration, for which I'm not the spokesman, their concern is that China is really the primary rising threat to American national security, and Russia is a secondary, proximate threat, but a secondary threat. And China is involved in a military buildup, and they are increasing the number of their nuclear delivery systems, although and warheads, although according to the Pentagon, they're still in the low 200s in terms of operationally deployed warheads, which is a small fraction of what Russia and the United States have, but they could grow in the future. So the mechanism the Trump administration proposed was three-way talks, and they were insistent that China be involved. I mean, and that just didn't come to pass, and is probably unlikely to come to pass, certainly in the current environment. That said, on the American side, there is a growing recognition, including among Democratic arms control experts like Rose Gottmiller, for example, that there needs to be some sort of arms control dialogue and discussions with China, probably bilaterally, and to try to capture their systems, limit their systems, get a better understanding of their capabilities, avoid miscalculation. I don't know that the Biden team has really pronounced itself on that. And I think their decision to just proceed with New START extension on its own merits suggests that they would probably conduct these things separately. I have one thought, Jill. I just would like to follow up on one of the questions Bill Courtney asked, a very good question, but I'd like to put to the ambassador. He had asked, Ambassador Courtney had asked, if arms control advances, might that improve U.S.-Russian relations? And my question for the ambassador would be a little bit of the converse, which is, I guess it's possible to have arms control negotiations that are carried out in the midst of difficult relations. That was done during the Cold War. But Mr. Ambassador, do you think there are steps both sides, including the Russian Federation, could take as a gesture of goodwill toward the incoming administration to create a better atmosphere for arms control talks? I mean, right now we have very profound differences between the two sides on everything from attempted killings of Navalny to cyber intrusion in American agencies. But do you think there are steps that might be taken at the outset of the Biden administration to improve atmospheres for negotiations, generally including arms control? And I'd be remiss if I just didn't ask you, since it's in the news today, is it the case, as the Americans say, that Russia carried out a cyber intrusion into American agencies to try to steal information, or do you consider that not a valid allegation?
Mr. Ambassador?
Yes, you said it. Now it's clear for me who Michael is. He is not a member of this administration because he mentioned that we are second threat for the United States, because this administration is considered that we are imminent threat and China is just only a second one. So it's clear for me, yes. I trust, Michael, that you are not from this administration. You're right. You're 100 times right that we need more favorable atmosphere in Russian-American relations. We should create more favorable atmosphere for our dialogue. But Michael, you understand that I get a salary here, and my purpose is to stabilize and to improve Russian-American relations. How can I get it if some key officials from Washington don't want to see me? I sent so many letters to Congress with just only, Jill, with just only one request. Could I pay a courtesy call? Could I come to you? Could I explain where we are? Could I say what we want, what we don't want? Could I say a few words about publications that I can see every day in your newspapers that Russia is a devil and so on? You see that, but there is no opportunity for me to speak. There is no opportunity for me to discuss. Michael, I need your assistance. I need your assistance as a journalist. You see that, help me. Could you, for example, organize a lunch? Could you organize a dinner? Could you invite some guys from Congress? We will sit together. We will discuss. I will bring caviar. I will bring vodka. And you see that I will create a good atmosphere for our discussion. Yes, to your question regarding so-called cyber attack by Russian side. I would like to say you, if you permit me, just only 30 seconds. We have published on our embassy resources, information resources, 2 paras on this issue. We paid attention to another unfounded attempts of the US media to blame Russia for hacking attacks on US government bodies. We declare responsibly. Michael, you see that it's for you especially. Malicious activities in the information space contradict the principles of foreign policy of Russian Federation. I will not continue. It's possible to find it on our site. Michael, you see that I would like you to understand that I have offered this administration, maybe for you are a journalist, it will be very interesting. I said that let's stop talking through mass media to each other. Let's organize meeting for FBI senior officials, CIA senior officials, our guys from intelligence and counterintelligence. We will provide space. I will leave this hall. Let them talk professionally on all problems that we face. Let's try to narrow gaps of understanding, and let's try to elaborate some code of conduct, for example. Let's speak to each other on this. Nobody wants to do it, nobody. But every day I see just only a side statement. So you say that it's possible to say, Michael, for example, that you have stolen my money. You will say, Mr. Ambassador, how it could be possible? I said, come on, I will publish tomorrow in my mass media newspapers this report. And it is very difficult to prove that you didn't do it. How could I prove that I'm not, that I'm innocent if I didn't do it? Let's sit together. Let's discuss. let's restart our dialogue. We are ready for it.
Okay, we are just almost at the top of the hour. I said we'd go 1 hour, and we pretty much will, but I have one more question, and actually it comes in from a colleague of ours. We know Pavel Shadikov, from Moscow, and he asks a question that is very similar to this, but takes it in another direction. He says, regardless of New START, arms control clearly goes beyond nuclear weapons issues. And there's been a long history of Russia and the United States disagreeing on the internet governance issues. So what he's asking is, kind of similar to what Michael is saying, we have this breaking news about the hacking. You've answered it as officially the embassy has. However, what Pavel is asking is, do you see in what way the cybersecurity issue could be part of the arms control agenda? Mr. Ambassador?
It must be. It must be. Moreover, I would like to remind you just only a few weeks ago, Russian president has introduced new ideas to the United States how to restart negotiations on information security. We have put a program of a potential cooperation. And it's not just only take it or leave it. It's a proposal to negotiate. It's a proposal to discuss. It's an invitation for our partners to start such dialogue. But to my regret, I failed to explain. Maybe it's not enough in my professionalism to persuade this administration to start such activities. And I hope that, Michael, maybe you will come to me. I will show some documents to you. After our lunch, you will use your newspaper to explain what Russia wants. We would like to start such cooperation. We are dependent upon the wish or readiness of your administration, and I hope that next administration will be more to Russian proposals on various issues, not just only on this one.
Okay, thank you. Michael, I have to say, you've got a good offer on the table: vodka, caviar, and a whole lot of information. So take us out. We're literally at the end of our time, but what are your last thoughts, and then I will thank both of you. Michael?
Well, I think that the incoming administration has a lot of reasons to be skeptical of Russian intentions, but they also do seek some areas of cooperation, and one of those is arms control and New START. And so I think there is the certainly, I think it's highly likely, if not certain, that New START will be extended. And I think there is the potential, at least, to come up with more far-reaching arms control, maybe even reductions in weapons and things of that sort. So that's sort of my big takeaway from there. And one thing I think, Jill, we should just let the ambassador clarify before we go, is I thought he said that the warhead freeze was for the current administration, and then the new team would come in and they would sort of see who they were and what that was all about. Is the warhead freeze for the Biden administration? Is that something that's on the table for them to work with, just coming in? I just think that's such an important thing that be good to get that clarified very explicitly.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Ambassador?
We have to start from the scratch. There will be new administration. There will be new discussion. There will be a new proposal, what to put on the core of our potential agreement. Let's wait for a while, just only 1 month and a half, and we will see whether the incoming administration is ready to extend the START treaty or not. And it's very important to understand what kind of world we will face on 21st of January. And just only a few sentences in the end, Jill. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to speak to you. I wish everybody a Merry Christmas. We don't celebrate in our embassy, but this year we decided to celebrate, and it will be day off for all of my diplomats as well. And we will celebrate also a new year. What you see that we are tired of bad Russian-American relations. So many problems, so many accusations. There is no possibility to explain where we are. There is a lack of dialogue between you, Americans and Russians. We would like to see such context more next year. We hope that new fresh wind will come to White House, and spring will come, and there will be a new round of Russian-American dialogue on various issues, and strategic stability will be in the center. Thank you very much. I wish you good health. Take care of yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador. Anatoly Antonov, the Russian ambassador to the United States, and Michael Gordon from the Wall Street Journal. Thank you very much. I have to say, Mr. Ambassador, I can see you're a very good negotiator and a very good diplomat. So thank you for that. And I'm going to throw it back to Dr. Angela Stent. And I have to say, many thanks this year for all the support that CERES, C-E-R-E-S, the Center for East European Russian and Eurasian Russian and East European Studies at Georgetown University, and also for the very important support by the Carnegie Corporation of New York. So Dr. Stent, back to you.
Thank you. I will just echo everything you've said. Thank both of our panelists. This was an excellent discussion. We certainly do hope for a spring and better things. And again, I'd like to thank the Carnegie Corporation that has made all this possible, to thank you, Jill, for doing an excellent job of moderation. And we'll see you all in the new year for our next event. Thank you.